the analogy I use is a lot of people will say, oh, you guys are like the analogy of instead of, giving someone a fish, you teach someone to fish. And we say, actually, it's more like the lake is controlled by powerful people, and we're giving people access to the lake. We're giving these farmers access to the global marketplace so that they actually have a choice in who to sell their coconuts to. We actually don't have exclusive rights to the coconuts of our farmers. They can sell to anybody. And giving them that choice is what gives them dignity.
What are the secrets that drive the businesses you love or nonprofits you admire? Join us as we uncover the surprising ideas at the intersection of causes and brands. I'm Dave Raley.
And I'm Carly Berna. Each episode, learn from leaders of nonprofits and companies that will give you insights that you can put into action. This is the Purpose and Profit Podcast.
Season 6 of the Purpose and Profit Podcast is brought to you by Virtuous. Welcome to the show today. Our guest is Erik Olson, CEO of Dignified. With over 20 years of experience in international development and social enterprise, Erik has dedicated his career to disrupting exploitative global industries and empowering communities through ethical business. At Dignified, Erik leads a mission-driven company that's transforming the coconut supply chain in the Philippines, creating dignified jobs, supporting over 150 farmer families, and addressing root causes of human trafficking. Erik, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I can't help but notice, Erik, you failed to include in your bio that you were also an alumnus of the same university that Dave Raley, the host of the Purpose and Profit podcast.
Well, since it's so widely known, I'm sorry for leaving that out.
So, I am a minor celebrity in the Purpose and Profit world. No, I tease. I was telling Carly when we saw your name come across, it wasn't you, actually. It was some of the folks on your team talking about the work at Dignified, which we're going to dive into today. But I was like, Erik Olson, I know that name. I went to college with him. So it's good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, it's great to see you again.
Awesome. Well, hey, so you started in the nonprofit world. I can attest, by the way, to the 20 plus years ago, Erik, that I met. I am not surprised. But you started in the nonprofit world and now you're running a business. So tell me about that journey. Like, how'd you go from nonprofits to business and what does that look like?
Well, and actually it started with business. I was a business major at Azusa Pacific University, graduated from the business school, and thinking that my impact was going to be make a lot of money and give it away. Okay. I didn't see myself jumping into the trenches, but I felt compelled to spend my first year out of college and go serve the poor. Kind of was thinking if I get into a corporate job with the golden handcuffs, it's going to be hard to get away. Or I thought if I start a business, it's going to be hard to leave it if it's right in that growth phase. So I thought my first year, kind of a gap year, I'm going to go serve the poor. And that led me down a long, windy road that ended up going to Iraq, of all places, in 2003, where bombs were going off. The whole country was in turmoil. And yet, in the middle of that, I just loved it. And all of a sudden, this new passion for the extreme poor just came out. And I started seeing real desperate need. And all of a sudden, my purpose in life was questioned. Maybe I should be right here in the trenches because I'm actually quite good at this. There's a lot of organization, administration, and leadership that's needed within the nonprofit world. And I could see myself really fitting that need. So I felt like I had this fork in the road. What do? Do I abandon this business dream and go into nonprofit world, or do I stick with what I had planned on doing and let it just be a gap year that I put behind me? And so I spent the next 9 years in the nonprofit world, raising up, launching teams into these hard places of trafficking, extreme poverty, and it was great. And then towards the end of it, I started having many of our teams say, hey, we're trying to do sustainable development work here. And really, I think the best thing would be if we could create jobs. that would help, because if we can create jobs, then people can pay for their own latrines. They can pay for clean water. They can pay to take care of the orphans, the widows, all of those things. And all of a sudden, I felt like my worlds were colliding, of this passion for business and passion for the poor. And I could see this way of doing both, and how I could do both passions. And so that's where we got involved in the Philippines, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, let's keep digging into that history. I think about your journey, right, in starting in business, and then finding yourself in the nonprofit space. So it reminds me, by the way, for our longtime listeners, this will be a way throwback, literally season 1, episode 1 of the Purpose and Profit podcast. We had a gal on by the name of Sheba Phillip. We actually had Sheba on this last season. And she talked about what was effectively a lifestyle jewelry brand that she was the CEO of, that that actually started as a nonprofit, helping to empower women entrepreneurs in Africa to create businesses. And then they realized, wait a second, these businesses are creating like jewelry and lifestyle goods, and how they really ultimately realized that if they pivoted to a for-profit business model, that would actually potentially help more women, more entrepreneurs to create more good, more thriving in their communities, as opposed to the, I don't know if they would have called it a handout back then, right?
Yeah.
So then for you, tell us about your journey then in the Philippines, and what was the moment that made you realize that business might be a more effective tool for fighting trafficking?
Yeah, so my father-in-law and we had been involved in the Philippines, helping with lots of different things. And this one area specifically was really vulnerable to trafficking. And we had done a lot of nonprofit projects, and they were good projects. We were trying not to create dependency, trying to really get close and proximate to the problem and really solve these problems. So we knew education was a big deal. So we built a high school, because up till that point, people could only go to 6th grade. And we built an orphanage, because there were a lot of orphans that were not being cared for. We did a clean water projects and some things. And still, we felt like we were hitting this glass ceiling. It wasn't solving some of these root problems that we knew were there. So we went out and did some surveys, and we went out and were asking a lot of questions to see what else are we missing. And I'll never forget, we went to this one farmer family, asked lots of questions, and on the way out, we just happened to ask one more question and said, hey, by the way, what's your biggest hope and dream for your life? And this man named Romer, he said, who again, for him, let me paint the picture real quick. So him and his wife, Jovi, they dropped out of school by 7th grade. They have no savings. They're drinking unclean water. They're living in a bamboo hut that every time there's a typhoon, it gets knocked over. When they're not growing rice or coconuts, they don't eat. And of course, no health care and things like that. So pretty hard situation. We thought he would say, my biggest hope in life is that my kids can graduate high school, or that I could build a cinder block home so that typhoons don't destroy it each time. But instead, he said, my biggest hope in life is that my debt is not passed on to my children. And that's when we realized there was this whole ugly side of exploitation happening in the coconut industry, where there's corrupt pricing practices. And then on top of it, these buyers of the coconuts are offered predatory loans of over 200% interest rates. The locals even have a word for this. They call it copra slavery. And so with all the other stress that they're carrying, this really crushes families. And so with their backs against the wall, they either have to give up their land to pay off the debt, or families split up with a parent or child taking a job far away as a maid or a waitress. And this is where the trafficking happens. So we realized that economic problems need an economic solution. We need to do something to solve the economic problem here. And so we basically quit our nonprofit work and started a business that could address this.
Do you think that there's other problems that can only be solved by businesses that nonprofits alone can't solve. I like how you said economic problems require economic solutions. Feels like a pretty simple way of explaining it. But obviously, nonprofits are trying to solve a lot of these things. What is it about business that you think can really help that?
I think nonprofits can do a lot. And I think I have a great respect for nonprofits, and I don't think we should do less nonprofits. As an example, I think a lot of nonprofits are really good at getting proximate to the problem and seeing really what are the root needs here. I think nonprofits are great at training people, helping them learn new skills, helping them think through how would I start a business and things like that. But I think there's some limitations to nonprofit work as well. One of the limitations has to do with there's a myth that I think a lot of people believe that most anybody could become an entrepreneur. That if you give somebody a small loan or teach somebody a skill, that most anybody could be an entrepreneur just because maybe they're scrappy in nature or have endured a lot of hardships in their life. And I don't think that's true. I think even in the United States where entrepreneurship is encouraged, there's a lot less bureaucracy in setting up a business and doing it. We are one of the most entrepreneurial people, and yet how many people would say they're really entrepreneurs? Less than 5%? Most people want a good job. Most people want to come to a job, do something that creates value, is meaningful, where they can get to the end of their day and say, I contributed. I did something that was good, and go home to their family. And I think nonprofits are not set up to do that well, to create jobs. And I think that's where business has an advantage. Businesses can create jobs, and also businesses can really help with fair trade. That's where the problem we had with all these farmers that were tied to these buyers that were taking advantage of them. As much as we were doing to help these farmers, what we really needed to do was give them a new option. Yeah. The analogy I use is a lot of people will say, oh, you guys are like the analogy of instead of giving someone a fish, you teach someone to fish. And we say, actually, it's more like the lake is controlled by powerful people, and we're giving people access to the lake. We're giving these farmers access to the global marketplace so that they actually have a choice in who to sell their coconuts to. We actually don't have exclusive rights to the coconuts of our farmers. They can sell to anybody. And giving them that choice is what gives them dignity. Yeah. It's not the only thing, but it's a key part. The more I think about what is dignity, the more I think it's having the choice. It's having the choice of sending your kid to college. It's the choice of, should I buy this or that? Should I invest in a cinder block home? Should I send a kid to college? Having those, when you don't have choices, that's where you're stripped of your dignity.
Yeah. Well, okay, so several things there. Number one, anybody who knows me knows I care a lot about sustainability, in philanthropy. But when you talk about this, it really resonates because if you think about, charity and organizations, NGOs that are in these communities, they're doing good work, they're providing, community development or what have you. But if the system itself that the people are in is essentially, to use your lake metaphor, is keeping people away from the shores or from accessing the lake, then we can provide all of the sort of support services around their livelihood as possible. But it's if their livelihood itself is part of why they're in the situation they're in, then we've got to address that. Yeah. So I want to ask you, so then one, why coconuts as the foundation for your business? And then how did you go from like good intentions to building something economically viable?
Okay, you're going to have to remind me of the second question. Why coconuts? Really, we were looking, let me say it this way. We really believe in asset-based community development, looking at what do you have that we can use to build up the community. I think most often, and especially as Americans, we come in and we see the needs and we want to like parachute in and be like, oh, well, let's just give you this, or let's just make you do this into the community. And I can't tell you how many community centers I've seen that are empty, how many schools are run down or whatever. And a lot of it is because we don't meet the need and we don't actually look at the community and say, you have resources. So we looked at the community and said, what do you have that we could build a business around? They said, we have rice, fish, and coconuts. And we looked at the first two and we didn't see a lot of innovative approaches to the market. And so we went with coconuts. And they kind of told us all about how it cures all these diseases. It's great for your skin, your hair, your immune system, all of these things. We kind of thought they were actually selling us snake oil at first. But turns out it really is a superfood, and it has all these amazing benefits for your brain, your skin, your hair. So many things I could tell you about, but I know it's not the purpose of this podcast. So that's how we got involved in coconuts. And turns out it's been really good.
So it's like, how did you go from like, okay, coconuts good to economically viable, like to something that you, Erik and team, could run a business, that you could provide livelihoods for these farmers? Well, like how did you then figure out the economic model?
It took us a while. We needed to really figure out what we could do that was going to be valuable, and how could we add as much value as possible for this community. And so most other coconut companies, they buy the coconuts, they make a few products, and then they ship it in big containers. And we thought, why not make the coconut oil and put it into jars right there in the Philippines? It takes out a lot of the middlemen. It brings the customer a lot closer to the farmer. Have become this bridge between the farmer and the buyer. And in fact, we have all of our workers sign the lids of the jars that are being made each day so that you feel that connection.
Oh, that's cool.
And you can look up the QR code and see the person's story. But I think in the beginning, it was trying to figure out how do we make sure that this is profitable. And I know in a lot of us in the nonprofit space, profit is kind of a dirty word. But to say it differently, how do we make sure that this is sustainable? And so it did take us a long time to figure out the market and to figure out the costs. And it took a lot of research and took a lot of talking to others that were in the industry and people that engineers and other business people who could help us create the model.
I'm curious, as you were kind of building that business, did you run into any issues? I'm guessing you've never created coconut oil before. So like, were there any things that made you have to pivot or, do things differently?
Yes, we had a bumpy road, and part of it was because we were building our factory in the middle of nowhere. It was like a jungle. It was dirt roads. If it was raining, you had to ford 7 rivers to get there. It was really, really difficult. So building our facility, we actually had to do it each cement bag at a time. And it took us a long time.
My gosh.
But then once we had our plant, we went to experts that were making other kinds of oils. And they said, oh, yeah, no problem. We can make coconut oil, and we'll help you buy the machinery and do it. Well, they couldn't do it. And we had failure after failure where they couldn't make the coconut oil the way we wanted it to. And so it took 2 years to really get to a point where we had made this coconut oil the way we wanted it. Now, we could have done it the way that all the other coconut oil companies were doing it. But, and that was actually our plan, was just to make regular coconut oil, kind of make a commodity. But there are 2 things that made us detour from that. One is we just started noticing the way that most coconut oil is made is not the best. There were parts of the process that used high heat in the process, and we knew that was killing micronutrients and it was impacting the taste profile. So we thought there's got to be a better way. And that's when we turned to the olive oil industry and learned how the best olive oils were made. And we tried to use that same process on our coconut oil. And in the end, turns out we made a really fantastic product that is uniquely better in the market. So it was difficult, and had we had many years where we didn't have any income, and we were burning expenses every month, and those were hard.
Yeah. Well, so talk about. I want to hear about the path, as it's continued on. But I also, one of the things you've described is the company as this idea of a redemptive business. What does that mean to you? How does that go beyond kind of the typical ethical brand or this like social enterprise model?
For us, if we were just doing something ethical, it would be treating people well. We probably would have been going to more developed areas and paying people a fair wage. The hard thing about the decisions we made to put our factory in proximity to the farmers that are hurting most is it took a sacrifice. We had a lot of redemptive work to reverse. A lot of people that had been through exploitation for years. We had to help a lot of people get out of those predatory loans. We had to teach people how to punch a time card. We had to do a lot of training to help people work at the factory. Most of the farmers we work with, they're not literate. So we had to teach people how to read and write in order for them to understand how to be organic certified. The organic certification process is incredibly difficult and requires a lot of documentation. And so that's an uphill battle that if we had just chosen to go in the developed city and work with some of these big plantations that are already organic certified, those would have been easy. And we could have easily been ethical with how we treat people. We wanted to go where it was hard, where people had really been through years of exploitation. And to do that takes a big sacrifice.
I'm curious, there's obviously a deep mission to your business, but also a product of actual coconut oil. How do you tell the story of that? Do you lead more with the product or do you lead more with the mission?
Carly,
yes,
this has been like the biggest question that we've asked ourselves in our marketing team. And currently, which this might change later, we've noticed that when we talk about the coconut oil and how much better it is, people, they kind of shrug their shoulders and they're like, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
But the mission really hooks them. And so we tend to lead with the mission.
Well, I was just going to add, I don't know if you've heard of the book Future Demand, but it talks about how we're usually so focused on our current demand, making revenue right now, that we're not always thinking about future demand. And future demand is really brand. And then it goes into how people actually neurologically respond to brand based on product features or a mission. And there's like this whole picture that shows like the left part of the brain and the right part of the brain, how they make decisions. And fortunately for your answer, it was that people make their decisions really based on that storytelling feature and that mission piece of it. And it's really not the product features that sell them. Maybe that's what creates current demand, but that's not really going to create that long-term demand. So I love that that's your answer because one, it aligns with what I just read yesterday. So hopefully it's true, but hopefully that also helps you too.
Carly, I needed to hear that like 7 years ago. It would have solved the problem for us.
Well, it's certainly a differentiator. I think that's one thing, especially doing a show called the Purpose and Profit Podcast, is what we're trying not to say is that, businesses should use this sort of virtue signaling or sort of like thinly veiled, we pretend we care about causes so that we can drive more business. And Dignity Made is a perfect example of an organization that's built from the ground up to actually make a difference and impact. And it is, yes, organized as a business. And that requires things like, getting good at marketing and product development and building factories, which is in some ways almost as hard, if not harder of a path. But what I'm excited about, Eric, as you share, is the sustainability of that, because once the factory is built and the production capacity is there, right, you can build on top of that, as opposed to let's reinvent and re-raise the money so that we can support people in the community that are actually still being exploited and sort of that cycle continues, right? I love the idea of, I don't know if you would use the word breaking the cycle, but of getting people that access that they haven't had to the global markets and to the proverbial lake.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For over 40 years, Dickerson Baker has been a trusted partner to nonprofits across the country and the globe. They've worked with thousands of organizations and helped raise billions of dollars to support meaningful missions. Their expertise spans fundraising, leadership development, and strategic growth. Dickerson Baker, advancing nonprofits. Boost your nonprofit's donor engagement with Synergy's phone-based solutions. From P2P texting to voice broadcasting or inbound call handling to mid-level solutions, they are your donor engagement team. Visit synergydms.com.
So as someone who's worked in both the nonprofit and for-profit spaces, what have been some of the key lessons or maybe even tensions for you in trying to manage purpose and profit?
I think when you're coming from a nonprofit perspective, a lot of times you're very focused on the person in need. What do they need? And so I think for many years, we did really good at how do we build something that is going to really meet those needs. But I think one of the things that has been hard for us is this tension of how do we then tell that story to the end consumer, who may or may not care of the nuanced approach that we have. One of the things I'm really proud of is how holistic this is and how our approach does not create dependency. And honestly, at least the majority of people listening, they don't care about that. Or at least they don't at first. And so I think one of the things I've learned is how do I tell that better? How do I get into the mind of the consumer and think from their perspective, which also leads me to think, what is it that they need?
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people who are kind of just doing regular life, juggling all these things, they want to feel connected. And this is something I'm kind of workshopping is like, I think most of us, we want to feel connected to the products. That's why when we meet somebody who's an artisan who makes something from scratch and then says, do you want to buy this for $20? Maybe you're at a farmer's market or something like that. There's something that feels really good about that because there's a connection to what was actually made, whether it's to that farmer at the farmer's market or whether it's to an artist or something like that. And I think for a lot of people, we buy our products and we're like, I have no idea where the heck this is made. If you look at the backs of our competitors' jars, it says made in Vietnam, Philippines, or Indonesia. We're
Just
not
somewhere.
sure.
Yeah.
Like,
We couldn't trace that in our supply chain.
Or you think of this story, I don't know if you guys remember this, but the iPhone girl. There was somebody who opened a box with their iPhone and it had a photo on it. And some woman in the factory in China had taken a selfie on that. And that went viral because there's so much almost secrecy about who's making these. Where is it coming from? How are they treated?
Yeah.
And so I think we have this desire to have this connection and to feel like I know where this comes from. And I know on one level, I know I'm not hurting the people, but also I think for a lot of people, they're wanting to know, is this doing good? Is this actually helping somebody? So I think that's one. I think I've underestimated how much a business can have a positive social impact. We kind of had calculated the impact we would have on our farmers and each new farmer family that was able to join, which by the way, I have like stacks of applications of farmers who want to join us and become a part of what we're doing. we estimated the jobs and the impact that would have and on their family. And again, I have a stack of applications of more people who want jobs. But what I didn't expect is these ancillary businesses that would pop up around the community because we chose to be in this area. The first example is when we were first building our plant with wheelbarrows and shovels and some bags of cement. When our workers would go home for lunch, there was a guy across the street who said, wait a minute, there's dozens of workers that are going home to eat. What if I created a little restaurant on my little picnic table here? And sure enough, a restaurant started. Then because we put our business there, the local governor, he had been wanting to put a road in this area because it was just dirt road. And eventually he got enough funding from others to be able to put a 56-kilometer, 2-lane rebar reinforced concrete road. That opened up transportation. All of a sudden, for the first time, we saw buses traveling through our area, and people could get to they could get to other businesses. They could get to the bigger cities. They could get access to hospitals. They would have access to all these other things that weren't there before because now we have buses. There was a guy who started a lumber shop because they saw we were buying wood from other places. And so now there's about 24 businesses that have sprung up just because we are stimulating the local economy.
Yeah. That's really powerful. Well, it's really this, back to this theme of sustainability and not only economic viability and sustainability for the individual, but also, as you're seeing, for the community and for the surrounding sort of, the people who are not on the quote unquote payroll. That's really powerful. And I want to make one comment on your earlier comment about just the complexity or the nuance of the messaging. Like there's so much depth there, right? I think that's the same challenge that every nonprofit fundraiser faces and product marketer, right? Because we know the deep, like the nuance, the depth of detail. And I feel like every for-profit marketer I've ever worked with, as well as nonprofit marketer, has some version of like, if only we could educate them, right? And it's but how do we package the essence of that? And I think that's what's so important, certainly in product marketing, but also in cause marketing, is like, how do we package the essence of it? Because they are, in fact, creating all of those beautiful, nuanced impacts. They just may not be aware of it, and that may or may not be the right messaging to use in the marketing.
And how to tell that message to the final audience, whether it's donors or an end consumer, without it being kind of exploitative or white savior language, so that it can be authentic and yet still be compelling, powerful, and concise.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, Erik, this has been so helpful. It's been really interesting just to think about sort of the business aspect, but also just what you're trying to do in terms of creating this sustainability for these communities, for really creating this system. So I love that. We love to finish every episode with a round of lightning questions. We prepped you that there would be lightning questions. We did not prep you what they were, although I promise they're very nice. They're not. Don't be nervous. So, Carly?
Yes. Okay, there's 6 questions. So just think of the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. The first one is, if you could instantly become an expert in any skill, what would it be?
Oh, soccer. I desperately want to be a good soccer player. And I'm just below average.
I'm having flashbacks to college, by the way. Was it ultimate frisbee or soccer? I'm feeling like there was some field.
I played on Alaskan grass. We kick grass.
Oh, yes. I remember you had a team name. I forgot about that. Good thing we got that into this episode.
Yeah.
That's when I started.
All right. Second question. What's your guilty pleasure TV show or movie?
Oh, currently Severance. My wife and I, we're kind of hooked on that. And it's very interesting, the whole innie outie thing. And I know this, isn't really like a spirituality podcast, but I just find that really interesting of like, can you bifurcate your work and personal? There's a lot of existential questions that are really interesting to me.
Yeah, I haven't watched that, but heard good things about it. Okay. If you could donate $1 million to any cause, what would it be?
My gut is trafficking. 30 million women and children woke up this morning without the choice of what they'll do and who touches their body. And I want to see that change. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's not changing with what we're doing currently.
Yeah, that's a great answer. What is the most random thing on your bucket list?
Well, it won't be random if you know where I live. I live in Minnesota, and seeing the Northern Lights in all of its glory would be great. I've seen bits of the Northern Lights, but they're more like a very light green hue. But, these photographers and videographers who get this like green, or going to Iceland, or I don't know, like I would just love to see the lit up sky like some see it.
I have a friend who went and did that, and she had to like basically wait outside all night out of her igloo or whatever she was in for like the moment that the Northern Lights came out. So
I can't tell you how many times my wife and I have we have an app, and we'd be like, oh, there might be an aura tonight. Let's go. And we'll like get up in like at 1 or 2 a.m. and we'll drive an hour away where there's there's a, what do they call it? A light. Where there's
light pollution. Yeah.
There's no light pollution.
Yeah.
And we'll go out and be like, is that it? It might be.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Should we stay? Should we go?
Yes. Yeah, that's funny. All right. What's a surprising fact about you that most people wouldn't guess?
Oh, gosh.
You're on a college soccer team called the Alaskan Grass.
Oh, I'm usually really good at this. Gosh. Are you going to be able to
you graduated college with Dave Raley?
That is a remarkable fact.
I'm going to go with that. That I graduated college with Dave Raley.
I bet you've never said that on another podcast.
And that we haven't talked in 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious. All right. Last question. If you could switch lives with anyone for a day, who would it be?
Wow. I think... Gosh, these people questions. I'm sorry, whoever's editing, I'm really sorry about this. Okay. I want to answer this well. I'm terrible with like names. Whenever somebody does like a name thing,
you're like, what names? So like, have you seen which movie? Name the movie, and you're like, oh man, I can't think of a single movie.
Name somebody alive, and then I'm thinking of everybody who's dead.
See, I feel like there should be something. Yeah, if we go on theme, it would be somebody like, I don't know, but Michelle Obama, or it's like somebody that
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa, yeah, that's a good one.
Except she's not alive.
Okay, I got it. It would be Nate Bargatze. I think he's hilarious, and I think comedians I love it how a comedian can just turn the emotions of a crowd. So I'd love to be funny.
I love that. I'm finally getting on the bandwagon, and my wife and I are going to go see him in a couple months. So I know I'm like years behind everybody else, but it's going to be good.
Fun.
Yeah. Erik, well, again, thank you for being on the show. Thanks for the reconnection. Thanks to your team. I love it. I love the work that you're doing. I love what you're trying to do. Your heart hasn't changed, candidly, since you and I were in college together. And to see you go through your cycle of working in the nonprofit space, but to be in business, but all towards making a significant impact in the world. I love seeing that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And until next time, I hope if you're listening, that you were challenged today or you picked something up that you can use in your own life and leadership. Until next time. We want to thank all of our sponsors for supporting Season 6 of the Purpose and Profit podcast, including Virtuous, Faith Search Partners, Dickerson Baker, Share, Synergy, Avid, and Imago Consulting. For more episodes of Purpose and Profit, visit www.purposeandprofitpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and we'd love it if you would rate the show and write us a review. Your feedback is valuable to us. Follow the show on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. You can also sign up for our email newsletter to get the latest updates. Thanks for listening.